Good evening. It is now 6:02. I'm calling the study session to order. Study sessions are limited to commission discussion. No public comment is taken. No action or vote will be taken this evening. The study session serves as an opportunity for the commission to dialogue and provide feedback on a proposed item prior to a public hearing. The first item on the agenda is LDC text amendment. If staff would please come forward for the presentation.
All right, thank you, commissioners. This evening, tonight, we are going to be discussing a potential text amendment for the HVC zoning district. The specific request before you is going to be allow increased height within that HVC zoning district. A little bit of background as to why we're bringing this forward to you. The town council has had a handful of heritage district retreat workshops over the last couple of years, the first of which in August 2023, where an Urban 3 presentation was provided to the council. This presentation highlighted the economic impact of varying types of development. And at that time, staff was kind of directed to look into this further and see how that could apply to the heritage district. So in April of 2025, we followed up with some information on other communities, what they do for height in their downtown districts. We provided some visual representation of what increased height in the district could look like. And we were asked to continue moving forward to gain additional research and reach out to additional stakeholders. And with that, I am going to ask Mike to speak to the next two slides.
Thanks, Kristen. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. So this slide right here kind of digs in a little bit to what Kristen mentioned about Urban 3. So in 2023, Urban 3 completed an economic analysis of Gilbert and the Heritage District, highlighting the need to maximize the remaining land through gentle density and diversifying use types to ensure that Gilbert's tax base at build-out can support the community's current and future needs. So this study outlined the productivity of compact mixed-use areas like the Heritage District, which maximize the value per acre of land and how these types of developments contribute to the tax base of Gilbert. As you can see in the graphics here, developments in the Heritage District like the Collab and Building 3R3 are great examples of how productive mixed-use buildings can be in supporting the tax base of Gilbert through optimizing the site area, stacking stories, and focusing on housing a diversity of uses. So why is maximizing value per acre important? So on this slide, Gilbert is known as a suburban residential community, but most of its revenues to operate the town are collected through sales privilege taxes. This highlighted the need to support density in industry-focused areas like the Heritage District, which supports the tax base. By increasing the productivity of industry-focused areas, it supports the quality of life expected by the primarily residential community without adding items like primary property taxes. So what Urban 3 likes to say is stacking your stories means stacking your dollars. Increasing density by just 1 or 2 stories as proposed in this text amendment can have significant impact on productivity and allow Gilbert to continue to be fiscally sustainable and support responsible growth. So you can see in kind of the heights are really high there in the Heritage District with the Collab M303. And I will kick it back to Kristen.
So in addition to that Urban 3 presentation being a driving factor into our request for increased heights, we also took a look into the redevelopment plan, where in it we ask for the goal of an 18-hour downtown. An 18-hour downtown is essentially a location where you can live, work, and play all within the same area without having to leave that district. In an area like the Heritage District where the parcels are often so small, it makes sense that instead of being able to have a horizontal mixed-use development where you can have your residential over here and your employment over here, you need to build up because there's just not the space in order to build outwards. So to summarize exactly what it is we're requesting, on the left you'll see what our current standards are. We have a maximum height requirement of 55 feet or 4 stories, the lesser of the two. Step-backs apply adjacent to single-family residential. Those step-backs occur above 2 stories. And we don't have any sort of mechanism for bonus incentives for increased height or anything like that. And the only way currently to get increased height is through administrative relief or through a rezoning and a planned area development. What we're proposing is a maximum height for the entirety of the HVC zoning district. Again, that's just HVC, it's not the entirety of the Heritage District. So a maximum height of 75 feet. We would keep step back requirements along adjacent to single-family residential, and we would also implement them along parcels that touch Gilbert Road. So for parcels that touch Gilbert Road, we would have those step back requirements starting at 55 feet, and we would keep the 2-story requirement when adjacent to residential. We're also exploring the concept of bonus incentives for parcels located off of Gilbert Road to potentially gain an increase of 15 feet in height, to possibly go up to 90 feet if they implement a number of what we're calling exceptional items, which I will touch on in a couple of slides. All right, and to better visualize where these heights will actually occur within the district, I provided a map here. So you can see the areas highlighted in purple are the districts that the locations that cannot exceed 75 feet in height. The parcels highlighted in red are parcels that could be eligible to go up to 90 feet in height if they do implement those bonus items. There's a couple of anomalies on here I just want to point out. You can see the corner of Gilbert and Elliott Road at the very far bottom end of this slide. There's some red on there, but that's the future South Anchor site. So if that gets approved, that will likely not develop to 90 feet because it's not proposed. And then Heritage Park, which is at the very top end of this slide, also has an approved plan, so unlikely to develop any higher. So why did we choose 75 feet? We took into consideration the current development. We took into consideration what exists, what's been approved, what heights are we currently seeing being asked for. We researched 18 different communities to gain insight into how they handle height, what are their height ranges, where is that height applied within their districts. And we also reached out to 6 different developers and architects to kind of pick their brains on development trends that they're seeing in the industry. So touching on our current development, this is a table of the 8 different structures that we currently have approved or built within the Heritage District that exceed 55 feet in height. The bottom 4, outlined in orange, all are within that 75-foot height requirement that we are asking for. And the 4 above that include the water tower at 125 feet, but the 3 others are all in excess of 75 feet. A large majority of these do include future Heritage Park buildings, but you do also have the Hernway parking garage, the CoLab, and Park University. So this is highlighting on the bonus items, and we really value your opinion this evening on this particular slide. This concept is still very much a work in progress, so if you have any feedback, please provide that. So what we're looking for is the possibility to gain an extra 15 feet in height, give or take whatever the commission decides, really. So we have 2 different categories. So we have a choose one category, which are more substantial items like excess public parking or underground parking or non-combustible construction type, things like that. If you choose one of these items, you are eligible for your 15 feet in height. Or you could choose 2 items from the circle on the right, which includes items like open space and landscaping. That's not currently a requirement in the Heritage District, so we see it as a bonus. A certain percentage of art, public amenities like ride share areas, things like that. Step backs to help design of the building move a little more, and sustainability features. So just to touch on some of the existing buildings that we have that do exceed the 55 feet in height. The CoLab, it is 4 stories and it's 64 feet tall. And then the university building, also 4 stories and nearly 70 feet tall. So in addition to the research that I've already mentioned, we did also go on a walking tour of the district. This is largely because the water tower is a very big point in this conversation. It's always asked of us to preserve the view of the water tower, but the question always comes back, where are we preserving that view from? Are we preserving it from a pedestrian scale, a vehicular scale, outside the district? Where are we trying to save that view from? So for the purposes of this, we did go on a walking tour to gain a perspective from the pedestrian scale. And I took 6 pictures from that tour and outlined them here. You can see from these 6 pictures that the water tower is visible from a handful of locations with the current development, but there are a handful of locations where it is not visible. In addition, if you took those locations where the water tower is visible from, let's say this site decided to redevelop in the future. This is on Gilbert and Vaughn, the southeast corner. This particular building currently is only 1 story. If it were to redevelop and build up to its allowable by right height today, of 55 feet, that water tower view would then be blocked. For context, I included a picture on the right of what that could look like at 75 feet as well. And then just a secondary example of a two-story building. Again, if this were to develop to 55 feet in height by right today, that water tower would still be blocked. And then another example of if it were to be approximately 75 feet. All right, and then moving on to the community research that we conducted, we chose these communities largely due to their proximity to the Phoenix area. Some of them are identified benchmark communities, and a good chunk of them are just communities of interest. This table is highlighting the ranges of those particular communities. You'll see that many of these are a range. It's not one stationary height. This is because a lot of these communities use proximity-based zoning, where if they're closer to transit, they can go taller. If they're closer to the internal of their downtown district, they can go taller. The yellow line is for 55 feet, which is what we allow by right today. The green line represents 75 feet, which is what we're asking for. And you can see that 5 of these communities do meet or exceed that 75-foot in height requirement. So I provided 3 examples, visual examples of those communities. We have Cherry Creek, Colorado, which allows 3 to 12 stories for a maximum height of 45 to 150 feet. We also included the south end of Charlotte, North Carolina, for a maximum height of 50 feet to 130 feet. We chose this one largely because they do also incorporate the bonus structure that we're thinking about implementing, where if they incorporate a series of items, they could potentially go 75 feet to 300 feet. 300 feet's a little crazy. We're not trying to get that high, but we do appreciate their bonus structure. The last example we have is for Asheville, North Carolina. They require a minimum height of 24 feet, similar to what our district currently requires, a minimum height of 2 stories for new developments. And they have a maximum height of 75 feet to 265 feet. All right, so after the community research that we did, we also reached out to some industry professionals. The main takeaways we took away from those conversations are that over time, building heights have increased, largely to accommodate the increase in larger floor-to-ceiling heights, depending on those uses that we're really seeing become more popular. A lot of those uses that are becoming more popular are experience-based uses and boutique-style Class A offices, where you are looking for more amenities with your office space as opposed to like large-scale office complexes. Think more hotel-like. And this is summarizing the different floor-to-floor heights that those uses are seeing. Commercial, 16 to 22 feet. Office, 12 to 16 feet. Residential, 10 to 13 feet. For an ideal building height of 75 feet. Once you get above 75-ish feet, you start getting into a high-rise building code, which requires different building materials and things of that sort. So that's why we were hearing from them that the ideal building height is 75. So I took those numbers and I built a conceptual development just for visual purposes. This is a 4-story building, which our code would technically allow by right today. This has a bottom floor of commercial of 20 feet with 3 floors of office above. Each of those office floors would be 16 feet. That puts this building at 68 feet. That does not include the parapet height, which could be an additional 5 feet in height. Even though our current code does allow 4 stories, this exceeds 55 feet in height and would not be allowed to develop with our current code. So we just have some terminology differences here. A setback is how far a building needs to be from a property line. A step back is how far that building needs to be pushed back once it reaches a certain height. The images on the right are 2 different versions of what a step back could look like. The top one is kind of more of an abstract version of a step back, whereas the bottom is your very literal staircase method. You don't see that very frequently, but I wanted to provide it as an example. And these are some real-world examples of that as well. So Optima is a great example of how step-backs could be incorporated into a design. I included this largely because it is one of our bonus items to gain that extra 15 feet in height. And when we put that into the list, this is kind of what we were imagining. And then Epicenter is a good example of how far a building is set back from their property line. And these last couple of slides here are just going to be concept slides for you. So we took 2 different sites within the district. We have no intention of actually developing these sites. These are purely just for visual representation. We wanted to show those concept developments at what 55 feet could look like versus what we're proposing. So the top image, this is the Chamber site, Gilbert Road and the Railroad. The top image is shown at 55 feet. This is a conceptual 3-story building. It's got about 53,000 square feet of parking, ground floor commercial at about 9,000 square feet, with office and amenities above at about 43,000 square feet. So if you took that building and you added 2 stories to it, your parking would remain the same, your ground floor commercial would remain the same, but you would increase your office and amenities to 72,600 square feet. The bottom image is shown at 72 feet. And just some additional renderings showing what a step back could look like with this development. And then that development in a larger context of the district. All right, and then the second site we chose is Vaughn and Oak on the northwest corner. We chose this one because it's a site that could potentially implement your bonus height of up to 90 feet. The top image is 55 feet. It's 4 stories. It includes 82,000 square feet of parking, 18,600 square feet of ground floor commercial, with 225,000 square feet of residential stacked on top. It also includes a row of townhomes along Oak. So if you took that building and you increased it to 7 stories, you would gain an extra 3 stories in residential, bringing it to 335,000 square feet. Your commercial would remain the same since it's ground floor, 18,600, and your parking would then increase to 128,000 square feet while also keeping those townhomes. And then just those developments in a larger context of the district. All right, and then just to kind of highlight what the next steps are after this. This is our first step after the initiation that occurred with Planning Commission last month. So we'll bring it to you for study session this evening. Following that, we'll take it to Planning Commission for study session, bring it to Chamber of Commerce for their feedback, and then public hearings with yourselves, as well as Planning Commission, and then study session with Town Council, and finally public hearing for Town Council if we get that far. Then, just to summarize, our request this evening is just a discussion on possibly increasing the height within the Heritage District, and I am open for your questions.
Thank you for the presentation, Kristen. As this is a study session, it does not require a vote. However, this is time for the commissioners to provide feedback and ask questions of staff and the applicant or consultant. Who would like to start?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Would it be appropriate if we brought in our alternate Commissioner Rabb up the diocese since Commissioner Clausen is not in attendance?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. You have questions?
Chairman, can I make a question and a comment? Question is, how did you decide that 75 feet should be the frontage along Gilbert Road as opposed to something taller?
Sure, so Chair Kendall, Commissioner Baugh, it was largely based in the research that we heard from the different communities. In addition to the developer feedback, we really took that into consideration because we didn't give them any sort of insight as to what it is that we were asking for, and almost all of them said the exact heights. We're thinking the 75 feet, so that's largely why we kept it at 75 feet. That's not set in stone. It is open for discussion if you prefer taller, shorter.
Could you go back to the exhibit that shows the purple and then the red behind it?
All the way back at the beginning.
Yeah,
Hold on.
sorry. There,
go.
yeah, there it is. Okay. So it seems to me that anything in purple has a portion of a parcel, regardless of how big or small it is. If any portion of its parcel touches Gilbert Road, then the whole parcel is deemed purple, right? And as you go through like what I call like the heart of downtown, you know, between the train tracks and the canal.
Mm-hmm.
Small parcels, mostly complete frontage. As you go north of the canal, on the right side, for example, some of those parcels have like a piano key that sort of touches Gilbert Road, but the majority of the parcels actually further away. And the reason why I bring up the comment is because I think those ones up there are probably more likely to avail themselves of the height as opposed to the ones right along the road for the time being, as opposed to the ones that are right in the center of the district. Mm-hmm. Those ones in the center district are new. There's new energy. There's new investment. It would be a while before we see some of those buildings avail themselves of this. Those buildings on the most northern are the most oldest and least attractive and probably have already achieved their economic life and could be the ones who would be the most likely candidates to go ahead. It seems more like a better standard, I think, to determine the height would be more of a buffer within the center line of the road. You know, whatever the number is, 200, 300, whatever. That if you're within that buffer there, then maybe that's how you mark it, as opposed to just being a parcel that might have a frontage as small as it could be that touches it. I've been to some of those cities that you guys looked at. Cherry Creek, I was there in February of last year. I love walking that area. It's so fun to be in there, and that's not necessarily downtown either. It's just it's a different area, but the height in that area actually gives it its charm, and you see a lot of different heights. Even the single-family homes go tall. There's a lot of 2-3-story townhomes in the middle of this area because the height's encouraged and promoted in that place, and it becomes more of a village, more walkable, less car-focused, and interestingly enough, the parking requirements are significantly lower in those places than they are in the suburban areas, and so I support more height. I think it's a key metric of downtown area, and I hope that the future discussion will be, do we expand the boundaries of the Heritage District so that other adjacent areas can avail themselves of that height opportunity as well?
So Chair Kendall, Commissioner Baugh, I'm going to respond to just a couple of your items that you touched on. Distance as opposed to touching Gilbert Road. That is something we can definitely explore after this. I know that in our GVC zoning district, so near the Cooley Station area, their maximum height is actually 90 feet there, but if it's within 75 feet of a single-family zoning district, they can only go to 60. So something like that could potentially be incorporated here as well, but not necessarily single-family, more so Gilbert Road.
Do you have any
being
idea
here.
what the depth is? Just
I
referring
don't.
to the stuff between canal and the train tracks, that purple kind of rectangle. Do you have any idea what that depth is right now?
I don't, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Any additional comments or questions? Commissioner Bigelow?
We definitely do need the density, and I know that if you go 90 feet and you're further out, there's those different options of doing underground parking. With allowing 75 feet on Gilbert Road, my two concerns or questions would be, how many more occupants would be occupying those buildings by having the extra 20 feet? And can we sustain the amount of parking that's going to be needed for that? Number one. And then number two is I feel like Vaughn and Gilbert Road is pretty developed, and I don't know, a lot of these buildings have been built within the past 7 years. I'm sure they weren't engineered to have multiple stories built on top of them. They haven't fully depreciated like some of the other ones that Commissioner Baugh had mentioned. So the probability of them going high is very unlikely. But then we also have a lot of very old historic buildings like the farmhouse building, where if a building right next door to it went 75 feet tall, I don't know what effect that would have structurally on the older historic buildings touching it, number one. And then number two, I do like height and I do like density, but I also like consistency. And I just wonder, we've already developed so much that having a few buildings shooting up 75 feet might look a little unproportional. And this is just my opinion of design and feel and, I don't know, just kind of thinking about the economics of what has been built recently and them tearing that down to go more vertical, and I don't think it makes sense. And then the historic buildings of, building right up against them or ripping those down and going up and what that would look and feel like. I think everywhere in red since it's parking lot, it's free game, you know, we can set the standard now, and I think everybody's gonna try to get to 90 feet and do underground parking. But Gilbert Road is just, I'm just curious to see how it's gonna play out.
Thank you. Just to touch on your parking question, right now, currently, we do allow the option for the AUPs so that commercial properties can off-site their parking. That's something that we would still keep just because it is a current standard that we do allow today, so we wouldn't take that away. But that's only contingent on, you know, until our parking runs out, and then it's up to those sites to park themselves, or unless another parking mechanism presents itself. But we would still permit the AUPs.
But that's the thing though, is if they run out, it's whatever empty lots there get built, they have it, and then if anyone else wants to, there's no more options, so then they either have to go underground, they can't force everybody who has already developed to go underground.
Yeah.
So first come, first served for the parking, more or
yeah.
less.
Vice Chair Updike?
Can you please go back to the slide showing the two options of incentives? I like the options presented on the choose one, specifically the additional height for increased parking, providing more parking. I think things like landscaping and art sound vague immediately right out of the gate, that choosing to, if I choose landscaping and art, how much of that incentive for their ability to develop higher is actually giving back something of value to the district. So some of the choose to, I feel there's just such a huge gap to me between the choose one and the choose two incentives. So just an immediate reaction, since we're in study session, I understand that, you know, our town is essentially built out. I understand we need density, and I understand that by right today, folks could demolish and rebuild and block the water tower, essentially. And I love the water tower, but I think the middle zone, the piano keys, I think you kind of called it, once we get the north and south anchors built, those are going to be the zones that do feel a little out of proportion. Are any of those actually classified as, what's the word you were, historic buildings? No. Okay. Oh, we don't have historic ordinances. Okay, you learn something every day. Okay.
Maybe old enough to be historic, but we don't have a historic category.
Okay. I had one more thought, but it just left me. So I'm going to unmic and see if it comes back.
Could I make just maybe a different contrarian thought? The building that has prep and pastry in it, what remind me the name of the building?
Building 313.
Yeah. At the time it came up, you know, it's one of the first tall buildings. And would anybody feel like that building's out of context? But they were one of the first to kind of go that tall. And I think, but what they did is they found height, and they still found a way to do height in the appearance of compatibility. I just have trust in the town leadership and the future RDC and the developers of those corridors. If one of those pieces were to come in, they would find a way to make it context appropriate, even if they're availing themselves of some of that height. And to Bo's point, I mean, that's a time so far down the road, because these buildings have to achieve their current economic life, and you mentioned the word depreciation. At that point, we're in a wholly different town status, you know, downtown environment. 20 years down the road, when those times come, that it might not look like what we have already. And so the thing about what I'm hearing, and when you look at that choose one and choose two, it reminds me of like when I go to Panera I'm gonna get a salad and a sandwich. But you haven't put out there the parameters of those things. And to me, that's sort of the recipe, right? So these are ideas, and until you really see the recipe, it's just ideas. At some point, like landscaping and art might seem kind of trivial. If there was something substantive to how you describe it, then maybe it can get you there. But
So for those two, we've been kind of tossing around more specifics for them. For open space and landscaping, we were kind of thinking of something along the lines of 10% because we don't require any now. So if you apply at least 10%, then that meets your category. And then art, we are less specific on currently, but we're trying to take an example from Denver where they take a percentage of, I believe it's the construction costs of those new developments, and that is mandated to apply towards art for the district. So all a work in progress, but those are our inspirations behind these items.
Commissioner Redd? Oh, you came back, okay. Vice Chair Updike.
I remembered. And really quickly, I did not notice the "and" symbol, so open space and landscaping.
Yes, together.
Got it.
Sorry.
That is more clear. I
Fit in-
just
fit in the
didn't
circle.
read it. Okay, I do want to comment our current floor-to-floor, or our current 55 height or 4 stories, and you can't really achieve both well. So I understand that. Why a text amendment if we're up for redoing the redevelopment plan in like 3 years, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just a little curious.
2028.
28, yeah. So soon 2 years. I do think we need the height. I guess I'm just curious why the text amendment versus let's really dive down, study it, and get it ironed out with the redevelopment plan update.
So Chair Kendall, Commissioner Updike, this originally started back in like 2023 is when we were first asked to start looking into the research for it. And it's just taken a year or two to get to this point. So incorporating it into the redevelopment plan changes is just not something we've talked about, but we certainly can if that's the route that the commission chooses to ask us to go. This was at the behest of council.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Redd?
Thank you. When I come to these meetings, I travel from the north, so I always drive through the Heritage District on my way here. And when I was thinking about this on the way here, I did drive through and I looked at the 313 building and the CoLab because I don't think they stick out, as Adam pointed out. I guess I expected, not knowing what I was going to look at, to feel like it was that much taller than everything else, and I don't feel that way. So I understand the need for the density and the height and the economic reasons behind it. When I first started looking at this, and I think you showed the slide with Gilbert Road and the purple and the red, I think I remember that, looking at that and thinking to myself, okay, the height is going to be off of Gilbert Road because that's where the 90 could be built. And I had some of the same thoughts that have been mentioned up here about Gilbert Road and the buildings that are there now and how new they are and how long it might be until those would redevelop. I know there's a few vacant parcels in there still that could go higher. I guess I'd say I'm in favor of adding height in some way. I'm interested in the comment about why not do this with the redevelopment plan, because things always take time, and the text amendment might take enough time that we might as well go with the redevelopment plan update in 2028. I did have, so you mentioned the Cooley Station district there and that they have the rights to go to 90 feet. And I know you mentioned earlier that there are 8 buildings now, I think 4 built and 4 planned in the Heritage District that exceed the height. How many other buildings are there in the rest of Gilbert that are either built or planned?
So Chair Kendall, Commissioner Robb, I don't know. That's a big
Okay.
question. I could see if we could run some sort of a report to find that out. I do know One sec to flip my page back. So by right heights throughout the town, commercial heights, you won't see anything larger than 55 feet unless it's been approved through a PAD. That excludes GVC and GBC, which is near Cooley Station. It's a small area. It's not a big chunk of the town, largely like the Heritage District. So that is a max of, I think it's 60 feet. This is new research to me, so I'm sorry. I just looked into this a couple of days ago. So I think it's a max height of 60 feet when you're within 75 feet of single-family residential. Otherwise, you can go up to 90 feet. For our mixed-use zoning districts, we have mixed-use large and mixed-use regional, where you can have up to 60 feet and up to 90 feet respectively. That's a new zoning district, so we don't have many, if any, of those currently. And then we do have the vertical overlay districts. There's a handful of areas that applies to where you could potentially go from about 90 feet to 150 feet. Have any buildings developed to those heights? I am not sure off the top of my head, but I can see what I can find out for you and get that to you if I can find anything.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. So a few questions here. The difference in building materials at 75 feet and 90 feet, is there any difference in those, like stick framing versus non-combustible? And then what's the development cost of those?
So Chair Kendall, I would love if someone from my building team were here today to answer those questions more specifically for you. So I'm going to do my very best. I know that once you reach, these are ballpark numbers, somewhere beyond about 80 to 85-ish feet, you start getting into you have to use non-combustible building materials. I know that Heritage Park, the multifamily building in Heritage Park, has podium on the ground floor because there's some commercial there. And then it is multifamily above, and that I believe is 82 feet. I believe that's number 2 on this list here. So that is about as tall as you can go from my understanding before you have to use non-combustible building materials, but it all depends on whether you're using all stick, whether you're stacking stick on top of podium. There's a lot of factors that it's not just a point blank answer.
Sure.
Great answer.
Thank you.
A very political answer. In regards to, and I think every commissioner touched on this as far as like parking goes, Commissioner Baugh talked about, let's call it the piano key lots. If someone were to go like 75 feet, does that mean they've got to dig a hole so people can park underneath there?
Okay, so they would still be eligible for the AUP or commercial. The AUP is only applied to commercial retail, things like that. It doesn't apply to residential. Residential needs to self-park. So for lots that size, they could apply for the AUP, but if, let's say, all the parking that we currently have is eaten up at that point, then yes, they would need to self-park by going underground.
Okay. Then, I also had a comment, on art, because that's very, in the eye of the beholder and what that looks like, but I think that you, define that. Mike had addressed the economic impact of that. For example, and we saw a couple buildings there, the Collab and the university buildings. Are those listed on here as far as like an example of how much revenue is being generated from those?
I believe that's what this,
So on the next slide, it doesn't have each specific building. We could follow up with that information because we do have the analysis for those buildings. But it, in the top right corner, that visual, the colorful pie graph there, you just kind of see the total valuation of sales tax revenue per acre. So the Heritage District, even though it's 0.3 square miles, from a sales tax revenue per acre perspective, is still pulling in that $1 million mark. So we call out those 2 buildings because they're 2 of the higher generators of that sales tax revenue, which we can follow up if you want to see like the specific building breakdown.
Well, I guess my thought process on the entire thing is we're gonna stop blocking views of the water tower, and I love the water tower too. You have to be able to justify it and why. So I think it's an easier pill to swallow if you can say, well, it's gonna deliver this much in revenue.
And that's some of the reporting that we have from Urban 3 that will show those examples, and they do have additional capabilities of kind of like a what-if scenario solution where you could potentially kind of put in inputs and see an output of what that, if it's X amount of commercial versus residential and that mixed-use development, to try to calculate and quantify those numbers as you look towards future developments is an area we could consider too.
Perfect, thank you. Any other comments, questions from the commission? Commissioner Bigelow?
Yeah, I have another just question and kind of thought. Per the redevelopment plan for the Heritage District, is there a clause or a phase that says if a property is within 1,000 feet of the border of the Heritage District that these same rules apply or may apply?
Chair Kendall, Commissioner Bigelow, I don't know. I know that I want to say it's our land development code, we have the 1,000 rule for projects outside the Heritage District need to come to you for feedback. But in that context, I don't know, and I'll have to research it unless Mike knows the answer.
Just missed that. Could
If there's a property within 1,000 feet of the Heritage District outline, are they able to apply to have the same opportunity for development?
Redevelopment plan, do you know if it mentions that?
I don't believe there is an additional buffer outside of the HVC zoning district, so I do not believe, I will confirm that, but I do not believe that's an opportunity available.
Reason I was asking is just with the Vaughn ventilator and with Neely Elementary no longer existing, just if that was the case, then just taking in consideration what effect that would have on that section of plot of land as well.
Well, I actually agree with that, especially with the open lot on Elliott and Gilbert Road, just south of the Heritage District, and then anything north of Juniper.
Gilbert and Elliott is in the Heritage District. It is just not zoned HVC and would need to be rezoned to meet these requirements. Neely would be different.
Okay.
Okay. I'm a little bit worried about parking, but yeah, that's it.
Any last comments? Okay. Thank you very much, Kristen. Our next and last item on the study session agenda is the Brunette Building. If staff would please come forward for the presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Veronica Gonzalez, Principal Planner. Tonight, I am bringing to you for some preliminary feedback on the Brunette Building, a revised proposal for this property. So the site is located on the west side of Gilbert Road, just south of Page Avenue, kind of nestled in between Jester's, formerly the farmhouse, to the north, and the Norwood Furniture Store to the south. And so tonight, I am asking the Commission to provide some general feedback on the proposed new building elevations and the landscaping for the site. So the site is currently 0.365 acres. It is zoned HVC, or Heritage Village Center, and the proposed building would be approximately 34,000 square feet in size. It will be 4 stories. The first floor would contain a restaurant with outdoor seating areas, an outdoor patio at both the east and west ends of the building. The second floor would be a retail showroom. The third floor would be office, and the fourth floor would be restaurant with a rooftop terrace. So landscaping within the Heritage District is typically a little minimal compared to other areas of the town. However, they are proposing some landscaping with this project, and that landscaping is primarily found on the east and west patios. The landscape materials that they have proposed are Texas mountain laurel for the trees, and Huntington rosemary and dwarf myrtle for the shrubs and ground cover. One thing that I would like the commission to provide some feedback on and some input is while Texas mountain laurel is an approved tree species within the Heritage District Design Guidelines, when you look at some of the other street trees up and down Gilbert Road, particularly with some of the newer developments, you'll see that they've used red push pistache, which is the street themed tree along Gilbert Road in the Heritage District. It's a pretty hardy tree. It's pretty drought tolerant, and it's really a very nice looking tree, particularly in the fall as the leaves start to turn colors. Also, what I'd like to get some feedback from the commission on is, again, pertaining to more street side landscaping. Gilbert Road in the Heritage District Design Guidelines is the street section that's been designated in that document is that it does call out what they're calling a landscaped area or a landscaped zone between the roadway and the sidewalk to provide some buffering and to enhance the pedestrian experience along Gilbert Road. So what I'd like some feedback on is incorporating some landscape materials within that landscape zone between the road and the sidewalk along just the Gilbert Road frontage. So with the building elevations, again, they're proposing a 4-story building, 55 feet tall, but actually 60 feet to the top of the mechanical screening, and that's that little area popping up you see on your drawings here. They are proposing a mix of materials. Those materials include a fiber cement panel siding, red masonry brick, and some CMU block. On the east and west elevations, which would be the Gilbert Road and the Water Tower Plaza facing sides of the buildings, those are primarily the fiber cement paneling and the red brick materials in those areas. And then at the balconies and the rooftop terrace, the balconies will have some metal railing, and the rooftop terrace will have some clear panels. The CMU block is being incorporated into the north and south elevations. Here you see the north elevation, and here's the south elevation. And this elevation is what I'd really like to get some feedback from the commission on. We're very appreciative of the fact that this side of the building incorporates the CMU block versus something like a stucco to kind of complete the space between the materials that wrap around the side of the building. You know, it's a nicer material, certainly a higher quality, enhances the design of the building. But I would still like to get some commission feedback on this side of the building in particular. And then I have for you here some renderings of the building in context with the buildings adjacent to it so that you can kind of see how it fits in there with some of the existing development. So this is the Gilbert Road frontage that we're looking at here. Again, Gilbert Road. This is the west side of the building, so this is what would be facing the Water Tower Plaza. I would like to let the commission know that this proposal is in its first review with staff. So again, we are bringing it to you to get some input on the elevations and landscaping to be able to incorporate those into staff comments as we send them back to the applicant. And that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Perfect. Thank you for the presentation, Veronica. This is a study session and does not require a vote. However, this is time for the commissioners to provide feedback and ask questions for staff and the applicant or consultant. Anybody like to start? Commissioner Rapp?
I guess when I started looking at this, I was focusing, I know you just asked to look at the south elevation. I didn't look much at the south elevation. I was focusing on the east and west elevation and the fact that obviously Gilbert Road is the front, but the fact that this, the rear faces the Water Tower Plaza almost makes it like a second front instead of a rear. So as I mentioned, I drive through on my way here, so I drove through and looked at that because I hadn't seen the final end of the construction of the Water Tower Plaza and how it would work with this, because if you, I don't know if you can pull back up the aerial, which is the very beginning, the alleyway in this location is only 16 feet wide, but the pavement of the alley that's currently there is much wider. It just happens to be on all of those properties that front Gilbert Road. And I did notice that they put an 8-foot rear setback from that patio, which would give a little more space. But you can see right now, the alley is where those cars are actually parked facing the Water Tower Plaza, and that's now demolished. I guess my question is, was the design of the Water Tower Plaza, did it consider any of this, or is the applicant considering the revised design of the plaza that's now built in that setback? Even on the elevation that you pulled up, it showed the nice patio in the back, but it also showed pavement right next to it on both sides because that's part of the adjacent lots. And is that 16-foot going to be enough to get everything through there? It needs to get through there.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Robb, very good question. And you know, as far as the remodel or the redesign of the Water Tower Plaza, you know, I wasn't directly involved with the outreach on that, but I imagine that our CIP staff did do some outreach and talking to area property owners as far as, you know, the impacts that the development would have in it. Pertaining to your question as far as the width of the alleyway back there, that is something that we are working both internally and with the applicant on. So again, this is pretty early on in the review, so we are continuing to have discussions about that.
Okay. So one of the items you asked for direct feedback on was the landscaping. And from what I can tell on the site plan, there's not a lot of room out on Gilbert Road for landscaping, detached sidewalk. Basically, there is a detached sidewalk now, but there's only a strip of a couple feet adjacent to the curb that landscaping could be put in. So is that something that you're going to talk to the applicant about, see if they can create a wider landscape area there? Is that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Robb, the widening the landscape area, it's a bit of a tricky thing to discuss because, you know, the sidewalk is existing in there.
Yeah.
The roadway is also existing in there, and we're not looking at widening the roadway. So we do have a pretty defined area for that landscape. So, you know, again, while it is a pretty narrow area, you know, it does provide some opportunities for some shrubs or other types of small plant life to go in there.
Okay.
To help, again, enhance the pedestrian experience and, you know, continue to enhance the street presence of the Heritage District.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Okay, I have a couple questions. The Texas Mountain Laurel, is that the tree that's shown in the renderings? I'm just not familiar, so I'm relying on the rendering.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair Updike, it's a good question. I don't know.
Okay, I love the red push pistache as well, but I think if this is a tree that's already approved, I think the rendering looks nice. I don't think we need the same tree everywhere, so I'm fine with what they've proposed if that's the tree. And
If I could?
yeah,
I apologize. Yes, that would be a Texas Mountain Laurel in the rendering.
okay, all right. And then regarding the the elevations. Let's see, it's the south elevation, right? Yeah. I'm good with the north elevation. I'm good with the south elevation too. I think if you're wanting more opportunities for design, options, you could run a layer of honed block similar to the lines that you're seeing on your perimeter. What were those panels? A concrete?
Fiber cement.
Fiber cement. I think that's an opportunity. I don't like to give direct guidelines on design. I like design teams to have flexibility. But you've got those perimeter lines that you could, within the same material, just hone it, and then you've got more lines carried through from east to west instead of having it kind of boxed out in the middle. But I think the material selection is nice. Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Baugh, Commissioner Bigelow, any questions?
When we looked at this project last year, there was a lot more, there were trees and a lot more greenery input, and the building overall, I'm assuming, is a similar height, but is a completely different style. Do you know the reason for such a drastic change in the overall concept or style of the building?
I don't know, pardon me, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bigelow. I don't know specific reasons other than that perhaps the owner was looking to maybe go in a little bit of a different design direction than what was previously approved.
Okay. And I know you specifically asked for input on the large section on the south side of the building. I'm assuming at some point, if the applicant wants to develop Norwood, whatever is put there would be covered up. That's why they didn't put any windows or do anything there, just to kind of leave that option available. If the building on the north side of this wanted to go 75 feet, it would take away from that whole side with the glass, which they just have to be willing to accept or live with it, I guess. And I guess I'm kind of asking if there would be any implications or issues if the building to the north to go exceed the height of the second deck, number one. And number two, I love trees, and just as much plants or greenery we can put on any building, I think it makes it look a lot better and just makes it not feel as hot in the summer. As far as the parking goes in the back, I do not know, nor is it my job to dictate what can or cannot be done. I know that the property line extends out pretty close to Water Tower Plaza, and I don't know if there's an easement there for cars to go back and forth. But what I think would be very helpful would be to see the image you have pulled up and exactly where the footprint of the building ends. I'm assuming that in the rendering in the packet, it's somewhere, the depth of a car, but it could be more. I don't know. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
The way I look at it is that his parcel can develop for the footprint that's allowed under the zoning code. And if the town is using that area on his private land for some access route, that's a private, it's a matter those folks got to take up. But within what we look at in the zoning code, HVC, and this design, that he should be able to move forward with whatever building he wants to do as long as it fits within that box of what it is.
And unless there's a specific easement or right-of-way?
Correct. Or the town purchases one or negotiates to obtain one for it.
Gotcha. And so per this rendering, it probably is going up to the property line.
Not necessarily. There could be a drainage easement there. I don't know. Maybe it's not a parking easement.
Or a major utility line or something.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's a building, it's just landscaping, so. Either way, next time, if we could just see a little bit of clarity of where this extended patio, how far is it encroaching on that, that pathway, that would be very helpful.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bigelow, we can certainly ask for those to be included, or included with the next submittal so that we can then include them in the package once we bring it back to you.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, my only other, I love the building. I'd say let's just build it. It wasn't too long ago, we were looking at this beforehand. A couple of things. The colors, materials remind me a lot of South Anchor, which you're going to see next on the agenda. And the other thing about last time, I felt like there was plants on the upper roof, patio deck. And if there was a way to add potted plants up there, I think it would really give a lot of relief and shade for the outdoor dining.
If I could get some clarification, that are you talking on the roof terrace or on the balcony as well, or?
The entire building.
I guess I'm just looking at, I don't know if I'm going to use the right words, but where the tables are with the glass around that area.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Comments? I like the building too. I hope it moves forward. I don't have any comments on the color of the block, anything like that. I like trees as well. I do have a question in regards to its neighbor or potential neighbor, the farmhouse, now the comedy club. Is there a pathway in between, or will it butt directly to it?
Mr. Chairman, no, there would not be an opening or, a pathway between. You might recall from the previous approval, I think it might have been on the south side of the building, there was a pathway. And with this particular design, we no longer have that, which is fine.
And is there any, do the town engineers see any concern of building a new building of this magnitude in between two older ones, and the cause that could potentially have on those existing buildings?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bigelow, we do have our building staff reviewing this as, a part of this. We're still collecting comments and everything, so I haven't received any specific comments in regard to that. But that's something I can certainly bring to their attention.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Veronica.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners, for your feedback. I will now adjourn the study session. And we'll call to order the regular meeting. It is now 7:05, and I'm calling the regular meeting to order. If staff would please take roll call.
Chair Kendall,
Here.
Vice Chair Updike,
Here.
Commissioner Baugh, Commissioner Bigelow,
Here.
Commissioner Clausen, Commissioner Rab.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters not on the agenda. The commissioner's response is limited to responding to criticism, asking staff to review a matter commented upon, or asking that a matter be put on a future agenda. Are there any communications from citizens at this time?
Mr. Chair, yes, there are. There are 3. I will bring them over to you.
Perfect, thank you. Doralise, would you like to start?
Good evening. My name is Doralise Machado Liddell, Gilbert residents. I just have a few comments regarding the redevelopment plan as it relates to the height increase. I'm not for it or against it. However, I'm for public input. I'm for in the redevelopment laws where there is a substantial change, which I believe this is, that it needs to be an amendment to the redevelopment plan, if not taken to the next redevelopment or the next 10-year cycle. So I believe it's substantial. I believe and I hope that the town attorney will address that, because moving forward, that's something that I would like to know. I would also like to address economics, and I think it's great. I'm for it. I'm for development. However, in the redevelopment area, that is a tax base, which I agree with, but we need to look at economics as it relates to selling the university building. We need to look at it as a taxpayer, how and why we are not charging for parking. We also need to know if you're going to develop to 90 feet, and the parking structure possibly would be developed to 90 feet, who's paying for that? It's the people of Gilbert, it's the taxpayers, through bonds and through, basically revenue. So that's why I think it needs to go back to the people, since it does truly belong to the taxpayers until it's sold to a developer, which is totally okay. Regarding the 18-hour downtown, it's great. I don't know when they're going to sleep, but that's okay. And I don't know where they're going to buy their groceries. That's always something, a concern. I think building going underground is great. That will improve the height requirements. I hear a lot about community outreach, but I don't know who's the community that you're outreaching. I don't know if it's the residents. I did see earlier regarding the Gilbert Town, whatever. I'm not sure. It was one organization, Gilbert Chamber of Commerce. They're in this circle. However, I didn't see residents. I didn't see the people of Gilbert, because the downtown is for all people of Gilbert, and all the revenues are for the town. So I just asked that, and those are my comments, and I hope that you reconsider taking this to the redevelopment and having the plan in place. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Dorlise. Mary Ellen?
There's a button.
Push the button.
Yep.
There you go.
Councilman Torgerson, Chairman Kendall, and Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Mary Ellen Fresquez. I'm a 30-year resident of Gilbert. Regarding the Unified Building Code text amendment that was discussed in the study session, I hope that you all received a letter that I emailed to Mr. Martella earlier today. In summary, I'm not against taller buildings in the Heritage District. I believe, though, that the look of the 200 and 300 blocks, which I call the central business core, is our brand identity. It's what makes Gilbert unique, even in the East Valley. It's central to the small town feel, which comes up over and over again as important to citizens of Gilbert. Even though we paid the consultant, Urban 3, to tell us that building density and height will provide economic vitality, I just think it's common sense, right? So I don't see why we have to pay consultants to tell us things like that. But parking lots do not increase economic vitality, especially those that provide free parking. Urban 3 comparisons use as a baseline Walmart. It's large, single story, huge parking lots. So, like I said, I'm always disappointed when they give us some obvious data that we know ourselves. Infrastructure costs continue to rise, asphalt, cement, rebar, pipes, etc. And I realize that our elected officials, our council, they feel the pressure to continue growth, but to contain costs. thus the move to the text change to the building code. However, we should not lose sight that in addition to added revenue, we must simultaneously address aesthetics. Let downtown Gilbert retain its identity. The right to 55 already exists, but we can still avoid taller buildings on the historic Gilbert Road. Historic, by the way, is the nomenclature used in the redevelopment plan for that road. So we could cap it there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Alan Fitzgerald?
She left the button on for me. I missed that last time also. Good evening, commissioners and Councilman Torgerson. 10 years ago, we stood talking about the height of the downtown, and we talked about why we didn't want two-story buildings, and things have morphed so much since then. Not that long ago, I stood here and talked about, and in the Planning Commission and Town Council, about the zoning change that was requested for the Brunette building. I'm very happy to see it at the 55-foot level and compliance with what was designed into the redevelopment guidelines. I'm very happy to see that happen. I'm very happy to have the downtown retain some of its ambiance. I own part of a building down there. I've been a resident for 40 years in the town of Gilbert. Remember when people used to tie their horses up at the Dairy Queen? I don't need to go back there. We're not going backwards, but we need to stay cognizant of why the development guidelines were created the way they were. It was from stakeholders in the Heritage District and the town of Gilbert. That process that is about to start up again for the new general plan in 2028 is a process that needs to stay intact. I was surprised at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to see this text amendment come forward. I thought that we had successfully had the conversation and that has a place. The place should be in the new general plan and not now or to precede it. I'm very much in favor of creating a vibrant downtown, and if the buildings go to 90 feet off of Gilbert Road, that may be the very appropriate thing to do. And all the complexities that go into the keyboard properties and how you decide what goes on there, Gilbert Road's ambiance should stay protected in a way that fits the needs of our visitors, of our citizens, of the businesses that are down there. Building 313 was a great addition. I think the Brunette building at its height is going to be a great addition to the downtown. No opposition there. Step back, build the buildings that make sense commercially and residentially. I don't have an issue, but let's do it in the process that creates the most robust and best results. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. We will now move into administrative items. Consider approval of minutes for the regular meeting held on August 20th, 2025. Are there any edits the commission wishes to make? Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the minutes from August 20th, 2025.
Do I have a second?
I will second that motion.
I have a first and a second. Let us vote. The minutes passed. We'll now move into public hearing. Items will be heard on one public hearing, at which time anyone wishing to comment on the public hearing item may do so. Comments will be heard from those in support of or in opposition of an item. In order to comment on public hearing item, you must fill out a public comment form indicating the item number on which you wish to be heard. Once the hearing is closed, there'll be no further public comment unless requested by a member of the commission. After the public hearing, the commission may act on all items not requiring additional staff, public, or commission comment with a single vote. It's my understanding that Commissioner Baugh has recused himself for item 4. So I will now open the public hearing for DR 25-24 South Anchor Heritage District. Kristen, if you could please come forward, provide the presentation.
Should have walked slower. Good evening, Commission. Thank you for having me up again. This evening on public hearing, I am bringing forward the South Anchor site, DR 2524. This site is on the northwest corner of Gilbert and Elliott Road. It's approximately 2.8 acres. This particular site has a development agreement that goes along with it. Some important items to keep in mind while reviewing the presentation this evening is that 14,600 square feet of active commercial space were required along Gilbert and Elliott Roads. A rooftop terrace may be permitted, but it cannot exceed 50% of that second floor commercial building. Horizontal mixed use is acceptable as long as it has clear integration and it is developed in one phase with the residential. 175 to 203 residential units are required. 287 parking stalls at minimum are required, with an additional 45 public parking stalls in excess of their required public parking. I'm sorry, just required parking. Construction of a parking structure is required. Ground floor residential, it will only be considered along the northwest and internal east elevations. The ground floor elevations on the west side shall be of a brownstone style, with at minimum row-like attributes, so front doors facing ash, courtyards, stoops, things like that. The conditional use permit to allow that ground floor commercial was approved through Planning Commission last month. So the site plan has differed a little bit since you saw it at study session back in May. There are still two buildings. You have your commercial building, you have your residential building. However, your parking structure now is subterranean with one floor so it's subterranean and then an additional floor on top, so your ground floor is also parking. You can see here by this site plan that that parking now faces onto the alley for the ground floor too, as opposed to where there were originally units on that ground floor of the alley. So now there are 176 units. We've added one unit since you saw it at study session due to the rearranging of where those units are placed within the site. There is the 14,600 square foot of required commercial. A large chunk of that is found at the corner of Gilbert and Elliott, but there is a small portion found at the corner of Ash and Elliott as well. Between these two buildings, there is a Paseo-style walkway that is connected through a structural terrace. So seen here is the landscape plan for this development. Along the roadways, Gilbert, Elliott, and Ash, you'll see Chinese pistache street trees. Along the alleyway, the applicant is proposing live oaks. Live oaks are not part of the landscape palette for the Heritage District, so that would require your approval this evening. I included a picture of what that could look like in the bottom right. All right, so these are the new elevations. We have the alley on the top, and then we have Gilbert Road on the bottom. These are pretty different from what you saw in study session as well. So for the Gilbert Road elevations, where you used to have a parking structure that took up the entirety of that elevation, you now have parking only on the ground floor, and you have units stacked above that. Staff does still have just some minor concerns with the material diversity along Gilbert Road. With the parking structure, a huge concern was that it was primarily stucco. There wasn't a lot of diversity. It wasn't overly fun to look at, and it faces Gilbert Road, so it should be. So we've just asked that the applicant maybe incorporate a bit more brick or some sort of other material into that, which is a condition of approval in the staff report that you were presented. For the alley, this is demonstrating that ground floor is now brick. And I don't recall off the top of my head if it was before, I apologize. But that ground floor is now parking, so you can kind of see the little parking windows along there. All right, so these are the elevations for Elliott Road and for Ash Street. We have kind of the same concern about the material diversity along Elliott Road. We've just asked that maybe they remove some of that brick, place it along Gilbert Road, and then maybe incorporate a little bit more stucco or metal paneling or just something to kind of break up the amount of brick that's on this. Again, that's a condition of approval that's in the staff report. The Ash Street elevations are seen on the bottom. And with that, I will highlight that there are two different options for the Ash Street elevations. They're very minor changes, mostly due to color. The top option has your brick color alternating 1 to 1 to 1 to 1, whereas the bottom is 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1. Staff prefers the bottom option, option 2, but we wanted to present it to you as well to see if you're in agreement with that or if you would prefer a different option. The bottom option, even though it's still kind of a pattern, we feel like it just helps break up that regimented feel that they were achieving with option 1. And these are just some 3D renderings of what the development is going to look like. On the bottom left, you can see that structural terrace that's connecting the two different buildings. The applicant anticipates to cover that with vinery, greenery, things like that to give it a more comfy feel while you're sitting at the tables and chairs underneath that. All right, and these are the close-ups of the Ash Street elevations. So one of the requirements, again, from the development agreement is that it needs to be of a brownstone style. Originally, the brownstone was kind of lacking, so we had a few meetings with the applicant, and the solution that we've come up with is that we do have a minor stoop, and in addition to that, they've incorporated a brick base to the railings, which is often found in brownstone-style homes, and staff feels that this does meet the requirement of brownstone feel for the development agreement. All right, and the next few slides are just going to be the floor plan. So this is your subterranean parking, 260 parking spaces. First floor has 5,470 square feet of retail, 3,930 square feet of restaurant, and there are also residential indoor amenities and a lobby area. There are 8 surface parking spaces, 125 garage parking spaces, a rideshare zone, and that paseo between the two buildings. I would like to point out that when you saw this study session, there was another application that was running concurrently with this for a reduction in parking. That is no longer being requested. They are all actually exceeding their parking by 3 spaces. This is the second floor, so 2,600 square feet of restaurant on the corner of Gilbert and Elliott, and then 2,600 square feet of a rooftop terrace and bar. And then you also have your residential courtyard and pool area, as well as an additional residential amenity area. All right, third floor, you're going to find just residential units. And fourth floor, also just residential units, but it's important to note that you do not have fourth floor units anymore along Ash Street as well. That will be restricted to just 3 stories. All right, so with this, it's gone. There was a design review, which is where we are today, and there was also a conditional use permit that kind of accompanied it. So on July 16th is when the Redevelopment Commission voted on the conditional use permit. August 6th is when Planning Commission voted on the conditional use permit. At those hearings, though, there was some public comment. There were 2 speakers at each hearing, both opposed to the design of the building. A large concern was that the design was not meeting the intent of a brownstone style along Ash. There was a little bit of concern with the lack of vertical mixed use and how they are now doing horizontal mixed use. And then there was a little bit of concern that that design that was presented to us during the RFP process is not the design that the applicant chose to go with. Staff is not concerned with the RFP design. The applicant is meeting the design guidelines. We feel like the design presented is a good design. At study session, some of your concerns, just to summarize, were that the Gilbert Road elevation needed improvement. Again, that was largely the parking structure. The design was too regimented. Ash Street needed some work, specifically to meet those brownstone row-like requirements. That Gilbert and Elliott needed to be more grand, and that we are missing the rooftop sign. So in regards to the rooftop sign, I would like to mention that as currently proposed, this development cannot have a rooftop sign. You'll see it in some of these renderings here. We are talking internally about mechanisms to allow them to have this rooftop sign if we decide to move forward that direction. But it is important to note that although you see it, that is not part of this approval today. All right, and with that, we do recommend approval of DR 2524, the South Anchor site, and I am available for your questions.
Perfect, thank you, Kristen. Would the applicant like to speak at this time?
They do have a presentation, yes.
Well, thank you, Chair and Commissioners. I'll wait till this gets pulled up, but my name is Alex Hayes, 2525 East Arizona Biltmore Circle. happy to be back with you tonight to discuss this South Anchor project. I know the commission's very familiar with this project. Seen it a couple times now, and it's an important site and an important project for the Heritage District. You know, it is really the kind of southern gateway or entrance to the Heritage District. And I think, as you know, this project and this property was subject of an RFP, and that was ultimately awarded to the applicant, Keeley Properties. And there was a subsequent development agreement that really provides the kind of parameters and guidelines and requirements for this project. Excuse me. I think staff did a great job presenting where this project is today. I just wanted to kind of highlight where we started and how we arrived with the proposal for you here today. I think the team has made a number of improvements, and I think the project has improved greatly with the feedback we've received and responded to. So our original proposal had 175 units. It's the horizontal mixed-use project. 368 parking spaces, almost 15,000 square feet of commercial. That includes some retail at the corner of Ash and Elliott, but primarily located at the Gilbert and Elliott hard corner, which includes that retail and restaurant with a rooftop restaurant and bar feature. We came before you in June, and we received some quite a few comments and some good feedback, I think, not only from the commission, but from the public and the residents in this area, that largely focused on increasing the parking, improving that garage facade, which is the east side of the multifamily building, really does have some prominence or visibility from Gilbert Road. Some comments related to enhancing the architecture, increasing the brick, providing that stoop element on the west side on Ash Street to again try to meet that brownstone row house style aesthetic and feel, and then providing some additional variation in materials and colors. Another thing we heard was reducing the building height along Ash Street as it's adjacent to that Lacey track, existing residential. And then, as we heard Kristen talk about the inclusion of a signage on the hard corner, kind of welcome to the Heritage District feature, which, you know, that we've included that on these renderings, but again, that would be part of a sign plan that would come before you. So I think the team did a pretty good job of hearing the feedback and incorporating it. And I think we really have improved this project, and the feedback we've received has made this a better project. So what we have before you today, 176 units, only one additional unit. We did increase the parking by about 25 spaces, so there's now 393 spaces. As Kristen mentioned, no longer need a parking reduction. Commercial square footage remains the same. I think probably the biggest change is that the project now includes an underground parking garage, so the bulk of the parking is below grade. And that allowed us to do a couple key things with the project, one of which is reduce the height on that Ash Street frontage. So we only have 3 stories there, where it was 4 stories and 48 feet before. And then we were able to change that east garage facade, where it was before kind of just an uninteresting or less interesting facade with just the side of the garage facing Gilbert Road. Now it's been wrapped with the multifamily and has kind of more of an integrated feel and a better aesthetic from that vantage point. So I'll move through these quickly. Kristen kind of highlighted this, but below grade on this is kind of a floor plan covering the entire property. You have the underground garage. The underground parking really does encompass the bulk of the site, really with the exception of kind of the drive aisle and entrance to the underground garage. On the ground floor, you have multifamily units along Ash Street. That was the subject of the CUP that came before you and ultimately approved by Planning Commission. On the Gilbert Road frontage, you have the multifamily amenity space, in addition to some retail, and that retail and restaurant at the hard corner. On the north side, you have the garage along the north alley. However, that has been, the design of that on the ground floor is meant to mimic and have the appearance of that residential architecture. On the second floor, you have the residential wrapping the multifamily building. In interior, you have the courtyard and pool, and then at the Gilbert and Elliott Road corner, you have the rooftop of the restaurant. Third floor residential and fourth floor residential. Again, I think key component is that excludes Ash Street, where we reduce that height to just 3 stories. Here you can see the original proposal for the building facade on the elevation on Ash Street. With new proposal, you can see that we've, again, eliminated that 4th floor, provided some additional architectural interest at the roof line with additional plantings along the street frontage, and at the corner added some metal paneling along the roof line. We've also incorporated those ground level stoops to again, bring that kind of brownstone feel and kind of activate that street frontage, create that kind of more urban feel. Enlarge the patios and canopies for the patios on the different multifamily units on the 2nd and 3rd floor. It kind of has a cantilevered canopy feel. Added additional materials and create additional variation with the colors. Again, here's the before and the after. It kind of gives you a sense of the changes there. And there's a more focused presentation of what these stoops will look like. I think this does kind of better meet that intent for that brownstone and row house feel. I know there was some discussion about, is it brownstone or is it row house? And I think, it's sort of interchangeable from our perspective, but this does sort of, I think, better achieve that intent. And then the other key component is that east side of the garage. This is, again, the vantage point from Gilbert Road. So where previously you had just the garage on that eastern elevation, now you have that wrapped multifamily, which does provide a much more integrated and I think more cohesive aesthetic. There's at kind of the ground level, show you can just see that entrance to the garage on the ground floor, and with the wrap multifamily. Colors and materials, we've incorporated additional metal paneling, more brick with some additional stucco to create additional variation, more architectural interest on that Ash side. I wish I could take credit for this. I think it's a really good looking project, but if we do have any specific questions as to why some of these materials were chosen or where, we do have a member of the architecture team here who can kind of maybe address some of those more specific questions. But just to wrap up, I think the changes that have been made really do improve the compatibility of this project, particularly as it relates to Ash Street next to that existing residential. We provided more parking, no longer need that parking reduction. Again, less height on that Ash Street frontage, kind of a better fit with the context on that Ash Street side. We provided the more materials and better variation along those different facades. We've improved the pedestrian design and created the more activation of that street frontage with the stoops and the patios, creating that better street level engagement. And I think very importantly, improved the aesthetic perspective from Gilbert Road. So this is consistent with what the town anticipated with their RFP and what we've discussed with staff, and it's been included in the development agreement. So I think it's a great project, and I think it will be a really important addition to the Heritage District. So happy to answer any questions you have.
Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on DR 25-24 South Anchor Heritage District?
Mr. Chair, yes, we do have 2 comments I will bring over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Dorlease.
Good evening once again. Dorlease Machado-Liddell, Gilbert resident. I would like to thank Mayor Anderson and the Town Council for their response to my concerns regarding the development agreement. I would also like to thank Councilmember Torgerson for directing staff to provide me the development agreement. And I also would like to thank the developer for continuing to design and bringing a product which is way better than it was. So I thank the developer for that. I just need one clarification on Exhibit 13. It appears to be the original proposal, and where it says stucco, actually it says stucco and it looks like brick, and it's on the far side of the building near the alley. I'm not sure if that's brick or not. On Exhibit 12, it does show the brick. I could see that. But my only question is the consistency of the brick and whether it extends to that last building, which it says stucco. That's my only, clarification. The other thing that I'm concerned with, it's not the design, it's regarding drainage. We don't have any drainage in the Lacey Track area. It's a problem, so hopefully that will be addressed. And lastly, I'm happy to see that the parking structure is not the focal point of the development, and that the developer built the underground level. And I think that the underground level should be a best practice in the Heritage District, and this will alleviate the need for increased heights. So in all, I appreciate the fact that the developer listened to concerns, and I think that the product will be one that we will enjoy. But my only question would be about the brick. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorlease. Denise Lopez.
Good evening, Councilmember Torgerson, Chair Kendall, Vice Chair Updike, Commissioners, and town staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening regarding DR 25-24 South Anchor Heritage District. First of all, kudos to the applicant for responding to feedback and obviously making those changes that were presented in some previous meetings. My name is Denise Lopez. I've been a resident of Gilbert for 15 years. And tonight, I hope you'll give me the chance to indulge me a little bit, because I would like to share with you a little history about the South Anchor. In 1917, the Lacey Tract was developed and named after the Philip and Mary Lacey family, who arrived in 1911. Philip Lacey was a dairyman with a herd of purebred Holsteins. The Lacey Tract was the second subdivision in Gilbert and was developed by John and Cora Phillips. The lots were on the west side of Gilbert Road, south of the railroad, and included the first Gilbert Park, where the first swimming pool was built by the J.C.'s in 1947. The Blakely Library was on the south end. Gilbert Park was established when the tract was recorded on April 19, 1917. The park was a block long and half a block wide. In 1917, when the Lacey Tract was recorded, Elliott Road was actually known as Pine Road. It was named after Charles Pine, who was the head of the Gilbert School Board when the Gilbert Public School District was created in 1913. The County Board of Supervisors later changed the name to Elliott Road. The homes built in the Lacey Tract were primarily bungalow-style homes, single-story, low-pitched roofs, and open floor plans. Many had windows and doors that opened onto porches, yards, or patios. Another popular type of home in the Lacey Tract were the Spanish-style homes, characterized by stucco exteriors, arched doorways, and often courtyards. Some of the homes have evolved over the last 108 years, but many have remained true to their original architectural intention. The town of Gilbert was not planned, it was not plotted and developed, it was not a premeditated upstart, it was not brought into existence by boosters. Gilbert just happened to sprout up at the railroad crossing. To the railroad sidetrack, farmers brought their produce and livestock to load onto trains, and because of that activity, Art Ayers saw a business opportunity. He bought the triangle bounded by Main Street, the railroad, and the Western Canal, and with his cousin, David Butler, they started in 1910 a grocery store. It was the first business in what would eventually become Gilbert. That's a little bit of history for you about the southern end of the Heritage District, the South Anchor, the Lacey Tract. I appreciate the opportunity to share that information with you tonight, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Denise. Does the applicant have any response they'd like to share in regards to the public testimony?
Thank you, Chair. I just had an opportunity to visit with Dorlease. She has an eagle eye. I think what she was pointing out was just a mislabeled. It looks like brick, it's depicted as brick, and it just has a label on it that says stucco. So we appreciate her pointing that out, and we'll get that fixed.
Thank you.
Alex, real quick, not that this is public knowledge, but I am curious if you're comfortable responding. What was the price difference for you to do the underground parking and to get the 25 additional spots? Like the rendering one versus the one you have today, like how did you make it work? Because I feel like this could be a way to inspire and to kind of show other developments that like this is the way to go.
Good question, and I don't think I have the specific figures for you, but it's often something that we hear is cost prohibitive, but I think in this case it was able to be feasible and they were able to make it work, but perhaps we can visit with you after and discuss that.
Yeah, that'd be great. I just think if you're one of the pioneers to do this, and if we're asking for taller buildings and this and that, then I think it's going to be implemented a lot more often in the buildings that are built moving forward. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Are there any additional questions for staff? Okay. I will close the public hearing on DR 25-24 South Anchor Heritage District and look for the commission for discussion. Who would like to share their thoughts first? Vice Chair Updike?
I like it. I think it has improved tremendously. I think I agree with staff if we go back to the elevation of option 1 versus option 2 for those varying finishes. I also like option 2, but I think some of the renderings maybe showed option 1, and from that 3D perspective, I was fine with those as well. So that's my input. I like it.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
I hate it. No, I'm just kidding. I think it's really good. It's a very impressive project, and I've never seen somebody put so much thought into a version 1 and a version 2 to not only make it look aesthetically better along Gilbert Road, but also just more functional, and I'm very impressed.
Commissioner Rad?
Thank you. Yeah, I came to this meeting expecting the applicant to make some aesthetic changes based on the comments that have happened over the last couple of months, and I'd heard from staff that a lot of work was being done. I did not realize that you were considering the underground parking, so I echo what Commissioner Bigelow said, that's impressive. Underground parking is very important when you are low on parking in areas. I park in underground parking at my job, and I enjoy it just because I don't have to get into a super hot car at the end of the day or when I'm going to a meeting. So I'm impressed with the underground parking. I also appreciate what you've done on Ash, going down to 3 stories, working on the stoops, and the cantilevered awnings. Those look fantastic too. I think that really adds to the look on Ash. Yeah, that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I share those same comments as far as the efforts that the developer put into that, and the involvement and taking input, and being able to learn, adapt, and adjust, let's say. I do have some concerns, and maybe this is more of a question for staff, in regards to live oaks, the tree. Would those be planted along the sidewalk? And then how large do those get as far as what I'm thinking is long-term pushing up of sidewalk with roots and those types of things?
Please hold while I Google.
Okay.
So unless the applicant knows, live oaks, Google says, can be as tall as 60 to 80 feet. They are planted as street trees, so near the sidewalk. Off the top of my head, unless Mike can pull up my presentation real quick with the landscape plan, I'm not sure where they are in relation to the sidewalk and the road. Give us 1 second. Landscaping is not my forte, I apologize.
I have several live oaks on a lot of different properties, and they're a very hardy tree, and they're meant to be like a historic tree that lives for 300 to 500 years.
Sure.
And if they're water planted properly, their roots do go deep and don't go out.
Don't go out and up.
Out and up, yep. They are tall trees, live for a long time, and it's a great tree for this use case, in my opinion.
Great.
So they're between the roadway and the sidewalk. Just for context.
Okay, thank you. I like option 2. I like it broken up. Yeah, that there. The parking, I applaud that. It's always a big conversation on this board. Is that public? Like, will there be public to visit the retail, to visit the restaurants, or is that going to be designated for residents?
Sure. So Chair Kendall, it is both. They have their required parking for their residents and their required parking for their commercial and retail and all of those uses. Then the development agreement also required them to implement 45 additional public parking spaces in excess of what they are required to have.
And so the assumption is they would be marked reserved or specifically assigned?
I don't know the specifics. I know that we have asked at one point if they could sign them, or if it's just going to be first come, first serve. I'm not sure the process there, but they do exist.
Sounds like an adventure. I know in regards to, and we're not talking about it tonight, but the sign. Can you walk us through what that process looks like? I've been a big proponent of making sure that on that hard corner that we have some type of welcome sign. It was pictured here, and I know it during various times we've had conversations about a scaling down because the building isn't high enough to have let's call it an epicenter size sign. Is that still in the plan? How does that work? And what does that look like?
Yes, so Chair Kendall, we have tossed around our options of how we can make a rooftop sign for this development work. It's still very early, but we've landed on really the only process to allow this would be a text amendment to allow rooftop signs on 2 stories. Right now, they are only allowed on 3 stories, up to 200 square feet. Preliminarily, if we did go down that route, and allow them on 2 stories, we would want to reduce that. We don't want a 200 square foot sign that's meant for a 3-story and taller building on a 2-story building. So our thought process is reduce that by 1/3. So it would be I can't math on the spot, I'm sorry. So we would reduce it by 1/3, and that's in theory what we would be bringing forward as a text amendment to allow this sign, but it would be contingent on that process.
Okay, and so then the building would be constructed to support that?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right. Just making sure. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Rapp.
Going off of that sign question, that text amendment would apply to the entire zoning district, or would you be looking at this site specifically?
Sure. So Chair Kendall, Commissioner Rabb, the way that rooftop signs work currently, we have segments that they're allowed in. There are 3 different segments within the district, and only 1 rooftop sign is permitted per segment. So the north segment is Heritage Park. They have a rooftop sign. There's not currently a rooftop sign on the 2nd and 3rd segments. So this would be within that 3rd segment, and we would keep that quantity. We would just now allow it to be on a 2-story building instead of a 3-story building, opening up more buildings to be eligible for it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Do I have a motion and a second for DR 25-24 South Anchor Heritage District?
I motion to approve DR 25 DR24 South Anchor.
I have a second.
Second.
I have a second. Let's go ahead and vote. All right. I'm sorry, scratch that. DR25-24 South Anchor Heritage District passes. Thank you, Commission. Now moving, Councilmember Torgerson. Do you have anything you would like to report on?
Well, it was great actually having nobody throw bombs at me for once in a meeting when they call my name out in advance. I like that. Celebrate fall at Gilbert's Harvest in the Heritage District. Get ready for a month-long celebration that brings the charm of fall to life, September 26th through November 2nd. There'll be live music, fall flavors, cultural celebrations, and this year, new this year is the Great Gilbert Gourd Hunt. Sorry, that was a mouthful for me. A whimsical scavenger hunt adventure featuring Ray Villafaine's pumpkin displays. You can get more information by visiting www.discoveredgilbert.com/harvest. And that's really all they gave me. There is no more. Thank you.
Commissioners, any updates? I have one. I applaud staff for the second month in a row making Councilmember Torgerson say whimsical. Thank you for that. Mike, do you have a report for us?
Mr. Chair, just one item. I wanted to talk about public art display in the Heritage District. It's referred to the community canvas. This includes local installations on electrical boxes, fiberglass benches, murals, and individual businesses, and seasonal public art installations. We've been working on a project through our office, primarily Sydney and one of our interns that was working with us this summer, Maddie. We did a call for local artists that was completed, and 6 artists were selected for this new alley door art installation around the Heritage District. They have locations at HD South, Heritage Marketplace, Joe's Barbecue, and the University Building. But we are anticipating those artworks on those alley doors being installed within the next week or so. So just wanted to put in a plug in for the artist process and everyone that helped out. So hopefully we'll have some great new art pieces for the community to enjoy throughout the Heritage District. And that is my report.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. Thank you to everybody. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All right. Do we have to vote for that? All right. The time is now 7:55. The Redevelopment Commission is adjourned.